Good evening, good evening, everyone. I have 6 o'clock, and we have a quorum of voting commissioners present. So I will open up tonight's meeting. This is the Thursday, July 28th, 2022 meeting of the Mashpee Conservation Commission at the Wacoit Meeting Room, Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North. We're being broadcast live on local cable channel 18 and streamed live on the Town of Mashpee website. Before we begin, if you would please stand and join me in a pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, I think I'll start with the pre- and post-hearing agenda, and we will look at the commission status change first from Chad Smith to Marjorie Clapprood. Drew, would you like to comment on this? Or?
Sure. So the commission was aware there were two petitions to change status of existing commission members, Chad Smith going from full-time membership to associate status, and Marjorie Clapprood taking the full-time seat from her existing associate status. So this was on the selectmen's meeting agenda their last meeting, and was unanimously approved. No issues with the requests. So those statuses have now officially been changed. I don't know. I'll find out with Chad and Marjorie. I don't think you need to get sworn in again or anything. I think it's pretty much.
I can look into it, Drew.
Yeah. But if there's anything additional that you need to do, we'll certainly let you know. And we welcome Marjorie as a full-time seat, and thank Chad for his time as a full-time member and also as chairman for a period. And we thank you both for stepping up as you have for the commission.
Thank you, Drew.
Appreciate it.
I'd like to echo those sentiments as well, especially to you, Chad, for willing to stick around a little bit and share your experience and expertise with us. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you. Okay, I think we can take the administrative approval request as well for the Catuit Bay condominiums.
Okay. So this is Michael. If you want to come up to the microphone, just give your name for the record and just a description of what the approved administrative request is. And I've got plans up here on the screen. These plans are from when the Vista Pruning was originally approved, kind of just to illustrate how it doesn't impact all views the same way. Some people have views. And
Well, my name is Michael Denoya. I'm site manager at Catuit Bay Condominiums. Drew's probably more aware of the details that we talked about, but I had numerous. We've been doing Vista Pruning in conjunction with the town and a number of years now, and I think it's gone very smoothly. Financial, we've had some other issues that we're dealing with at the condos. So the pruning has been backed off a bit, but I've had a lot of concerns from residents there asking about what we can do about their concerns. So the only way I could answer that was to, I knew enough to call Drew and ask him if he could do a site walk with me to discuss the various problems that we're confronting without potentially not doing a full Vista Pruning project this year, but to try to keep up with some of the overgrowth that we're dealing with and in a few specific areas. One of the...
All right, Jack, you can't just do this. You have to put tinfoil in.
Whoever's speaking, can you mute your audio, please? Thank you.
Yeah, specifically, one of the...
No, I know. I'm just...
Hello? Hello? All right. Sorry about that.
No problem. My concentration on this issue was a little sketchy anyway. So a couple of the buildings, we are within the 100-foot embankment there where we have some pretty serious invasive vine problems going on there. And it's been a very big growing year, and we have people that have, done a lot in their basement areas to create homework sites with the potential beautiful vista that they have out there that they can't see at this time. So that's where I came in to ask Drew what we could possibly do to keep up with it, so that we don't have another, in the next 2 years, have total problem. How's that?
Perfect. I think that, covers everything we went over. So this was just to elaborate, give you some of the background, the plans that you see here. These were, let's see, 2009. So these plans were created for a notice of intent and subsequent issuance of order of conditions for vista pruning around Kituah Bay condos, which has pretty substantial frontage along the area of the Santuit River where it comes out into Shoestring Bay. And these red highlighted areas, these are the corridors that were kind of 50-foot wide corridors that were established per every 200 feet of frontage. And they were try to place them, and they're just going to showing some of the other areas. These yellow lines here are additional 50-foot corridors. And when you're dealing with condo complexes, the way the wording is under the regulation, it really is worded with single-family homes in mind. So when you're dealing with condo complexes, you have to get a little bit creative because you're dealing with, more view considerations than your typical single-family residence. So you can see all these view corridors that were spread out along the entire frontage and then out where the units look out into Shoestring Bay here. So just to show the commissioners, just a snapshot. So these are all the units here. This is Santuit River. And then you've got these units out here that look out into Shoestring Bay. So obviously not all the corridors have matched up with the units. And so I went out with Michael to take a look at some of the units where the vegetation growth was coming up pretty thick and not really covered under these corridors. So that's kind of what they're asking for, is just a case-by-case pruning for certain units to try and improve the view, and the protocols would be the same as what's under the existing order conditions. And Kituah Bay Condos has been really great about staying on the same page and following the protocols to the letter. So I don't see any reason to be concerned that would change in the future. And then we also identified a lot of areas, as you had mentioned, with some invasive material, particularly Japanese knotweed, which is growing pretty thick in a lot of areas. So any opportunities to cut that back, or maybe someday have it treated to eradicate them, is something that we also discussed. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And as I said, this is already covered under an order conditions. It's just be expanding on a case-by-case basis some of the units that kind of got left out with the quarters, because it's tricky to try and accommodate everybody. But the more we can do that, the less likely people will take matters into their own hands, which we know has happened from time to time, but it's been dealt with. As I said, Kituah Bay Condos maintains a really good communication with the departments anytime that happens.
Okay. I have a question, Drew. Is this primarily invasive vine pruning or trees as
No,
well?
it involves, in some areas, the units that we looked at, it's the shrub level vegetation that's really growing up so thick that you just can't see anything, up to like 8 to 10 feet in some areas, just because it wasn't part of the original corridor. So those are what we're looking at, and also invasive vines in some areas too.
So no good-sized trees at all, just...
No, and the trees, the mature trees would only be, that's just the limbing. This is really shrub level vegetation that's coming in real thick.
Great. Any other questions or comments, concerns from the commissioners? None. Then I would certainly entertain a motion for the approval of this administrative request, if there is one.
I have a question. So is this going to be every unit is now going to be able to see, even though, like, so some of these people, when they bought their unit,
Your audio's cutting out, Alex.
when these folks bought their unit, did they have a view?
Not necessarily. I mean, some did, and some didn't. I mean, for the majority, before they got this order of conditions for vista pruning, I would say that, a view was probably far and few between along all these units. There really wasn't much. There was probably best view was looking out over Shoestring Bay in those units. But as I said, you kind of have to get a little creative when it comes to condo complexes to try and strike a balance with units having somewhat of a view. Because right now you've got units that have a pretty decent view of the river, and other units that are just completely closed in and have no view. But I think when you're dealing with such a large stretch of buffer zone in this case, that having allowance for some pruning in accordance with the regulations, so it's selective pruning, it's not clear cutting, to allow more views, not going to be detrimental, in my opinion, to the buffer zone or lead to erosion or anything like that, because you're opening things up more. It's really just selective pruning. But again, it's something that you just kind of have to see how things pan out and address, and that's why I said it's on a case-by-case basis. So I would be called each time someone wishes to do pruning and have proper oversight and make sure it's done the right way for each unit.
So, but at the end of this, every unit will be able to see.
They'll have some limited corridor view, just like the existing units that have those existing corridors.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Can I ask a question, Drew? It's Erin.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, I mean, full disclosure, I live here, but I'm wondering about selective pruning. There are some things like trees that are very young right now, oak trees that are growing on the embankment. Are those going to be things that we can prune away now before they become mature and then start tipping towards the water?
Yeah, those things can be looked at, and that is what's making up a lot of the understory now, are these immature, there are oaks, and a lot of sassafras is coming up, and sassafras grows like weeds. So it comes up and it clusters and it fills in very quickly. So not, it's similar to seeing like a shrub level vegetation, but it's actually saplings of trees in some areas. So yes, I think it makes sense to do that to allow that in some instances, where it's growing in real thick and it's just sapling layer and there are no shrubs. It should be treated the same way.
Thank you.
I have another question again. So when this is done, can it be done in a way that not a mature oak? Yes. So there are mature oaks, but then what's the next level to come up? I want to make sure that there's some coming up that will be able to make it through to maturity, so that the ones that die off, there's the next generation to come through. So I just want to, I guess, say that to you, Drew, just to make sure. Yeah,
so that's part of the protocol, is that if we're looking at, a particular corridor, let's say from a particular unit, and we're looking out over the bank and seeing, the vegetative strata, those same protocols would apply as if it were a single-family lot. It would be 20% of saplings, pruning of shrub-level vegetation down to a height of 5 feet, no more than 30% of the branches per mature tree, which is larger than 5 inches DBH. So all those same protocols would apply in every instance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept the administrative approval request for Katuah Bay condos for vista pruning.
Thank you, Steve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Charlie. Any further discussion before I call for the vote? No?
Are we going to add the order of conditions, or is that just?
Yeah, my apologies. I should have put the DEP number there, but it will fall under those same protocols.
Okay.
Okay? Good, all right. Now voting. Tom?
Aye.
Brian?
Yes.
Thank you. Steve?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Charlie? Charlie?
I could just barely hear you. Did somebody just call my name?
Yeah, they're asking for your vote on this.
Yes, but I just could barely hear him on any of his questions.
Okay, and is Marjorie still here or no?
I don't believe so. Oh, yeah, she is here, yeah.
Marjorie?
My first big vote is a yes.
Thank you. And I vote yes as well. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All set.
Thank you, sir. Okay. We'll move to 6 o'clock hearing.
Yeah.
Now calling the 6 PM hearing, Town of Mashpee, 95 Timberlane Drive, proposed construction and maintenance of stormwater retrofits and modifications. Representative, Mashpee Department of Public Works. This is a notice of intent. Drew, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. So this has been requested to be continued at the request of the applicant to August 11th at 6:12 PM.
6:12.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we continue the Town of Mashpee for 95 Timberlane Drive, notice of intent until August 11th at what time, Drew?
6:12.
6:12 PM.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Charlie. Any further discussion by the commissioners? There being none, I will call for a vote. Tom?
Aye.
Thank you, Brian.
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Marjorie is still there?
Yes.
She's in there.
Thank you.
Yes.
And Charlie?
I don't think he can hear you.
I can't hear anything. I could just hear a few of them, and that was it. I don't know if I should just continue this rate. To be honest with you.
Are you, Charlie, let me just ask, are you on your computer audio or are you dialing in on your phone?
Dialing in on the phone.
And your computer audio is shut off?
Pretty sure it is. I'll check on it.
It's showing that Ross Friedman has interference coming through. So if he could mute, that might help.
Okay. So Ross Friedman, if you can hear us, if you can mute your audio, please. So Charlie, you were requested to vote on this continuance to August 11th.
Yes, I did say yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. I'll vote yes as well. Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to the 603 hearing. This is David and Evelyn Oliver, 181 Surf Drive, proposed tree removal and pruning for solar panels. Representative homeowner. Do we have someone here to address the commission? Would you come up, sir, and state your name for the record, please?
Yes, hi, my name is David Oliver. I'm a homeowner at 181 Surf Drive, and we've recently had some solar panels installed on the roof of the building, and we have some trees just off the southwest corner of the foundation. They're marked in yellow on the map you see there. They're extremely tall, and they're shading the solar panels, and we'd like to request to have them removed.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a number of trees that are to be taken down?
There are 4 pine trees and 1 oak tree.
So 4 pine, 1 oak.
4 pine and 1 oak, yes.
And any understory as well, or just the trees themselves?
Just the trees themselves, yes.
Okay. I have no further questions. Any of the commissioners that are present? Those online, Alex, question? Or Charlie?
I'm just curious, what will go back underneath?
Underneath?
Trees that are to be taken down, what's going to go in their place? Is it just going to be lawn, or what will go back?
It's outside the 50-foot, so it could be a 1-to-1 mitigation if the commission wants to require that, but there wasn't any mitigation as part of this proposal.
So what are they planning to put where the trees are taken out?
Well, the trees are being taken out because it's to increase the sunlight exposure, so there's nothing to replace them. There was nothing proposed to replace them, it's just removal. They're not being removed for any hardscaping or landscaping, they're being removed to increase sunlight exposure to the roof for the solar panels.
Right, I'm just curious what's going to go in their place. So I guess if they're going to put lawn, I would just want it to adhere to our lawn regs.
Oh, sure.
We don't intend to put any lawn there. There are shrubs in the area,
Yeah.
and I imagine that over time those shrubs will fill the space.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from the commissioners? No? From those in attendance, any questions, comments? Okay. Any other comments, Drew, that you'd like to make?
Was there some pruning of branches around the house?
Yeah, there are also some branches just off the deck, and there are some limbs that are growing over the garage
Right.
that we'd like to have removed.
Okay. That was the other aspect of it. There's some maintenance pruning for branches growing out over the roof that are causing debris issues.
Yep.
So,
Okay. No other questions? I forgot to mention and open the hearing, this is an RDA, not an NOI, so if there is a motion, I'll entertain that.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion for David and Evelyn Oliver, 181 Swift Drive, proposed tree removal and pruning for solar panels. For an RDA, my motion's for a negative determination.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Charlie. Any further discussion by the commissioners, concerns? Those online? Okay, we call for a vote. Tom?
Aye.
Brian?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Thank you, Alex. Charlie?
Charlie?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I vote yes as well.
What
Motion
about
carries.
Marjorie?
I think she left. Did she leave? She was supposed to be,
Yeah, she is.
she had to
is
leave
done,
before
okay.
6:30.
Yeah.
Okay.
So excuse me, has the request been approved?
Yes.
Okay.
Negative determination is
Okay, I was a little concerned about the negative
yeah, it's
aspect of
it's
it.
a little counterintuitive.
Yeah, it's like
Okay,
looking in a
all right.
mirror, it's backwards.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks so
sir.
much. Thank you.
Oh, they have a number now. Yeah, that's good.
Now calling the 606 hearing, Joseph J. and Kathleen C. Cirillo, I hope I got that right. Cirillo, 65 Redwood Circle, proposed construction of 3 additions to existing dwelling and permitting of existing elevated walkway. Representative, Wet Tech Land Design Incorporated. This is an NOI.
Yes, good evening. It's Wayne Tavares, Wet Tech Land Design, representing the Cielos. Previous 2 meetings was on Zoom, so it's nice to see you in reality. We were at the end of the phase of this where we had done mitigation, and because of a walkway, thank you, Drew, we stepped into NHESP territory. So over the last 2 weeks since the last meeting, we have got approval that it does not affect anything in NHESP, and consequently, we were given a file number. I think that's what we were looking for, file number SE 43-3184. If there's any questions on this, I think we covered those in the last 2 meetings. I'll be glad to answer them. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the number. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, SE 43-3184.
3184. Thank you. I'll open it up to the commissioners first for questions, comments, or concerns that you might have on this project.
No.
I guess there's none. None? Okay. Questions or comments from those in attendance? There being none, Drew, I'll turn it over to you for your comments on it.
So just to refresh the commissioners, this is a project involving after-the-fact permitting of an existing stairway going down inland bank leading to Mashpee Wakeby Pond. And this this section here is a platform midway through, so this will be eliminated to maintain a consistent 4-foot width in compliance with Reg 29, which deals with buffer zones and buffer strips. So that'll be a condition of the permit. And also, I didn't write it in here into my comments, but I would also recommend a condition of a 2-year monitoring and maintenance contract for the monitoring and maintenance for the mitigation plantings. The project does meet the performance standards for inland bank. No work is occurring on the bank. Mitigation proposed to create a buffer zone where none currently exists. Just to show some photos of the site, here's the top left is a view of the existing home from the street. And you can see one of the addition areas here. There's the stake that shows area footprint for one of the proposed additions. Mitigation is also calculated for the loss of this tree, which is flagged for access purposes. And then you've got this right here, this area, bottom left and bottom right, shows the other addition that's proposed. So this tree here is being removed for this work on this addition here. And that mitigation was calculated out at the previous hearings. So that is being mitigated for. Then you've got here, this is the top of the inland bank, stairway leading down the bank. There's the platform. This area will be removed to maintain that 4-foot width. And then again, on the other side of the property, just another area buffer zone to the inland bank. So it's all grass. So this strip right here along this area, that's going to be planted up with mitigation plantings to establish some sort of a buffer zone where currently really none exists leading up to the top of the bank. So the project meets the performance standards, and as I mentioned, if the commission is going to close an issue, I would include the conditions of removal of the platform area to maintain a consistent 4-foot width on the stairway, and submission of a 2-year signed contract with a qualified landscaper to maintain and monitor the mitigation plantings.
Okay. I have one last comment. The plant schedule and the mitigation table that's currently on this plan, that has not changed since our last meeting at all?
I did modify it for the changes we talked about. I'm saying that We had an area of coverage from the first meeting that I said that was non-coverage, but we are taking a tree down, as Drew had mentioned, for access.
Right.
So we did a quid pro quo swap, I think, in which we said, let's leave the mitigation sit the way it was, and I modified that. If you draft down a little bit, Drew, on the plans, I did modify the table, the mitigation table, to reflect that, and made a note. It's on the top of, there we go. So the plant schedule's on the left-hand side, the mitigation table is on the right-hand side, and I made the proper modifications to that drawing. Same drawing that appeared last week. It was the NHS ESP that stepped in and prevented it from going forward. So I apologize.
So the 590.08 is what we're using. The coverage 590.08.
The mitigation actually is on the lower left. That's what it calculated to. Excuse me. Yes, you're right. That's what it calculated to. But with the addition of the tree, on the left-hand side, you'll see mitigation plant area, 737 square feet. So we exceeded the area needed because the tree came into effect. I subtracted that area that we discussed as double coverage, and it came out to less area, but our agreement on the table was the tree made up for that. So you have 737 square feet of mitigation area when only 500, and I can't read it from here because it's in green, 530 some odd square feet is required. I'm sorry, can you read that? 509,
590.08.
Yeah, 590.08 was really what's required. So we threw the tree into that, and we left the mitigation alone.
Okay. All right, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or concerns from anyone in the audience? There being none, I will entertain a motion,
Okay,
if there is
Mr.
one.
Chairman, I make a motion for Joseph J. and Kathleen C. Ciulo, 65 Redwood Circle, for proposed construction of 3 additions to existing dwelling, permitting of an existing elevated walkway, for a approval and issue of order conditions for the notice of intent with 2 conditions. First condition, to remove the platform on the stairway going down the pond. And the second condition is a 2-year monitoring and maintenance contract for all the mitigation plantings.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Brian. Any discussion, comments, questions on the motion that's on the table? Good. Our commissioners online, any last comments or questions? Okay, there being none, I will call for a vote. Tom?
Aye.
Thank you. Brian?
Yes.
Thank you. Steve?
Yes.
Thank you. Alex?
Yes.
Thanks, Alex. Charlie?
Yes.
Thank you, Charlie. I vote yes as well. Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
You too, thank you.
Okay. Now calling the 609 hearing, Adam J. Dector, 44 Pompanesett Island Road. Proposed raise and replacement of existing dwelling with garage, pool, mitigation plantings, and beach nourishment. Representative, Cape and Islands Engineering. This is an NOI. Good evening.
Good evening, Mark Dibb with Cape and Islands Engineering, representing Adam Dector at 44 Pompanesett Island Road. This is our second hearing. the first hearing, we had a request from Drew to provide calculations for mitigation based on existing versus proposed development for this project, and it did result in mitigation changing from a requirement of about 1,200 square feet up to 2,056 square feet. So then after that, I also did have a site visit with Drew and Tyler Gaudreau of Environmental Land Solutions to discuss mitigation and areas and options for the property. And based on that site visit and Tyler Gaudreau's input, we revised the plan to provide over 2,100 square feet, so an increase of over 900 square feet of mitigation, with an updated mitigation plant list, as well as mitigation planting notes prepared by ELS as well. We did also just add a couple other notes. There's an area on the plan with a temporary staging area for beach nourishment. What that is, there's an existing, basically a bare spot. It's the yellow highlight that after work on the house has begun, a machine could sit above the bank without damaging anything, to be within the limit of work and be able to place sand, which then could be moved by hand without any disturbance to the bank or resource areas, as well as we added the pool drawdown structure note to provide a cover to grade just on that dry well to the southeast corner. So I believe we responded to comments from the agent, and if you have any further questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to the commissioners first for questions or comments from our last hearing and what's been addressed. No? Our commissioners online, questions or comments? So, Mark, I have a question. I know I had asked about the dry well for the pool maintenance. So this is piped underground, or is it going to run on the surface to that drain? How is that set up?
Yeah, we're providing a cover at grade. Ultimately, I think it'll be based on the pool design, if they're able to pipe something, or if it will be done with some kind of spigot off of the pool equipment and can be used hosed into that. But we're providing surface access. We're not, at this point, I think,
Surface access, okay.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you. Drew, I'll turn it over to you for questions or comments you'd like to make.
Not much to add. As Mark had already mentioned, I met with him and Tyler out at the site to kind of look at areas where we could fit in some of the additional mitigation calculations, and we looked at some areas here on the bank. There's some barren areas here where this staging area, and then on opposite side of the existing fixed pier, another area here that's actually looks there's some spots where it could be starting to erode. So some good opportunity for additional coastal species in those areas, and came away with a good plan to put in the additional mitigation. And so not much more to add. That was the only issue in your question on the pool drainage. So I think those have been adequately addressed, and I would recommend to close an issue with the condition of a signed 3-year monitoring and maintenance contract for all mitigation plantings.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from those in attendance? None? I forgot about people online. Do we have anybody that's called in, or?
No, anyone who's online is part of an application.
Okay.
So.
Okay, great. All right, there being none, I will call for a motion.
I would recommend closing issue with a recommendation of condition of 3 years of monitoring and maintenance, a maintenance contract.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. Is there a second to that motion?
Yeah, second.
Thank you, Steve. Any further discussion or comments on the motion that we have on the table? No? None? Okay, call for a vote. Tom?
Aye.
Thank you. Brian?
Yes.
Thank you, Brian. Steve?
Yes.
Thanks, Steve. Alex?
Yes.
Thank you. Charlie?
Yes.
Thank you, Charlie. I vote yes as well. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm going to need to recuse myself for the next two hearings since both applicants are clients of mine. So I'm going to step out of the room for the next two hearings.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
And 1, 2, 3. We have plenty of voting commissioners. Okay. Okay, now calling the 6/12 hearing. Mitchell Friedman, 33 Nahoyden Road. Proposed construction of a new single-family dwelling and Title V septic system. Representative Falmouth Engineering, and this is an NOI.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the commission, for the record, Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant and property owner, Mitch Friedman. Mr. Friedman's here tonight as well. If there's issues or concerns or questions to him. The application is to construct a single-family dwelling on a 12,100 square foot lot. It's in your jurisdiction solely because it's in land subject to coastal storm flowage. In fact, it's one of the last few lots in this subdivision that is fully developed with single-family homes. It's surrounded by houses, roads, a roadway system. It's in excess of 500 feet from any other wetland resource. The closest wetland resource would be Great River and the adjoining wetland resources to the west. So the house is proposed as well as a Title V septic system. It's a 3-bedroom house. It's in a AE flood zone, so the house will be constructed to AE flood zone standards, no basement. The first floor would be elevated to above the base flood elevation. You have a local provision within your regulations that requires us, I believe it's a 20% of the existing natural vegetation to remain. So the plan before you demonstrates that there's actually 21% of the natural vegetation, 2,603 square feet that is proposed to remain, and there's a limit of work that identifies that. The plans were prepared by Engineering Works, Pete McEntee, and we're supporting him by filing the notice of intent application. I think that sums it up. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. I think I'll start with the questions. Mike, I'm looking at it's a standard Title V proposal.
Yes.
Regulation 25 for Chapter 172 clearly focuses on protection of groundwater. And I'm not thoroughly convinced that a standard Title V system is going to offer the kind of protection that groundwater needs. given the recent developments with the DEP and their concerns over nitrogen influx into our embayments and the groundwater. So my question, and I've been asking this consistently now for several meetings, why not an IA system proposal to reduce the nitrogen flow?
Yes. The simple reason is basically in this area, it's fully developed, densely developed, and to put the burden of trying to mitigate against impacts to groundwater on this single property owner is inequitable in our opinion, and any reduction in nitrogen from this single lot would be de minimis to the groundwater. So I would make that statement, and I would say to you that I understand that the only real place that you can identify as a area that would be applicable for protection will be to groundwater in a general sense. I don't know that there's any specific performance standard in your regulations or within the current DEP regulations that mandate a DNITE. So we believe that putting that burden on one single lot when all of the surrounding properties that have been constructed that I'm aware of them do not have IA systems. So that's why we did not propose this initially.
Mm-hmm. If we're going to talk about burdens, the town is looking at two possible scenarios in the near future. That would be a watershed permit, or to just outright start placing IA systems in. This area is certainly not in any stretch of the imagination on the radar screen for sewering.
Right.
So once you get outside of what the town is proposing, be it the first step or a possible second phase, those properties outside are going to have to look at some mitigation standards. So if you were to put in a standard Title V tank now, only to find out 5 years down the road it's got to come out, there's a burden. I mean, that's a double expense. So why not address the issue now rather than later?
Understood. I think the applicant would be willing to take that risk. I guess I'd just respond also by asking a question. Is this going to be is there going to be a rewrite to the local regs that mandate this? Is there going to be a requirement for any of the surrounding existing houses to upgrade if they come before you for anything? Or because
right.
We feel as though we understand that the trend is to go this direction, and you read about it. We understand that. We don't disagree that IAs are good. It's just in this instance, it's not going to have a measurable effect. But if your policy is going to be this way, and we were hoping we'd hear back from individual commissioners before you vote on this. So the way I look at it is, you could accept our arguments and vote to close an issue. I have a question. Does this rise to the level of a denial if we don't propose an IA, or does it rise to the level of approval with a condition that we must submit an IA? Because we'd like to know before you vote on that, because we may choose to continue to regroup if this is going to be a denial.
Right.
But right. I use the term straw vote, but I would like to hear some feedback before, so we have an understanding on where we stand before you vote.
I'm just the first one to ask questions, and I can't get into the heads of the other commissioners, nor can I tell you that the town of Mashpee is going to take a full-blown approach to rewriting regulation. I don't know. I know the situation that we're all up against.
Sure, I understand.
And when I see a Title V system come in, I have a lot of questions as to why.
Sure, I get it, and I don't disagree. IA is a good option, but I'd like you to consider the location and its proximity to wetlands and the surrounding existing septic systems.
Sure. Okay. I'll turn it over to the other commissioners for questions or comments they might have.
Am I voting on this one?
We have enough,
Yeah, I think we still have a quorum.
but you're more than welcome to question or comment as an associate. Brian, no? Tom, any questions, comments? Anyone online that would like to question or comment?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I don't think it's putting the burden solely on this lot to ask for them to do an IA system if it's going from a fully vegetated lot that was previously providing some sort of environmental function with the trees, the filtering, and whatnot. If they're going to clear the lot and put in a house at 10-foot, excuse me, at 10-foot elevation, I think it's reasonable to ask for an IA system. Just my comment.
Mr. Chairman, a
Yes.
lack of comment from the quorum members doesn't give us any direction. So we don't know where we stand. And I don't want the hearing to close without knowing where we stand with the
Okay.
vote. Or, because I'd like to reserve the right to continue if I have to.
All right. I'll open it up again to the commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask a question?
Yes.
This is for really all the commissioners, but specifically Drew, because I honestly don't know the answer myself. When we require, obviously we know IA systems are a great thing, particularly where it comes to the proximity of the water, and also for the reasons Alex outlined, that we are removing vegetation that does some of that mitigation. So my question is this: as a commission, what kind of position are we in when we require a lot to have an IA system where we've haven't made that requirement of other hearings? Does that put us in any kind of legal bind?
So, I mean, the standard, for decision-making and rationale really is the commission making a decision based on the values associated with a particular resource area, or are they being completely arbitrary and capricious in their decision-making? So that's like, the overall standard for any application. I would say that for newly developed lots, at least from recent experience and observations, that you have required, and there have been, IA systems. Now for like raise, replace, or septic upgrades because of failure, no, you haven't required that. But this is not a septic failure. This is an entirely new development on an undeveloped lot. So you get into the full teeth of the regulations, the full scope of values associated with the resource areas, which is land subject to coastal storm flow, which Reg 25 is probably one of the most involved, detailed regulations we have under Chapter 172. It's got the most standards, and justifiably so, because the flood zone is a very sensitive area when it comes to water quality, when it comes to habitat. So, in my opinion, land subject to coastal storm flow is one of the most important areas to protect. I do understand the point raised that the surrounding area is already fully developed and with standard septic systems. But if the commission takes that into consideration in every single newly developed lot moving forward, well then I don't really understand that form of logic. I think it's reality, but is it justified? Is it a justifiable point? I don't think it is when it comes to newly developed lots. I think the standard should be as high as possible, especially when it comes to water quality issues, which we know in the town of Mashpee are being heavily compromised. And it's really about setting a precedent moving forward when it comes to new development in town. And as Paul mentioned, this area is probably not going to be sewered. That still remains to be seen. But I think that when you're dealing with water quality issues that we have now, and water quality is a value that's associated with land subject to coastal storm flow, as well as many other regulatory standards. It is a theme running throughout all of Chapter 172. So I would say that if the commission were to deny this or, look to require an IA system as a condition of approval, that, in my opinion, you would be justified. And that's not to say that it couldn't be appealed, it couldn't be overturned. I don't think it's completely arbitrary and capricious either, and that's the standard.
Thank you, Drew.
Sure.
Any other commissioners that would like to comment?
I guess I would be looking to work with the representative and the applicant to continue if the rest of the commission, from hearing from members, would prefer an IA system rather than move forward with I just don't know. If they said that they would be willing to continue, when's the next?
It would be August 11th, and the time slot would be 6:15 p.m.
We wouldn't want to continue just to continue. We would only continue if it's clear to us that you appear to be wanting an IA system. I would also want to know if you could approve as currently submitted with a condition that we submit a revised plan if you're so inclined for an IA. Do you need it? Can you make that a condition, or do you need it on the plan before you close?
I think they could make that a condition.
Okay. So, do you want to say something, Mr. Freeman?
Could I?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. And ladies and gentlemen of the commission, I appreciate it. I'm Mitch Friedman, the hopeful builder here to construct this. Anyway, so as everyone knows, I work with Steve and Pete McKinty doing all the site work, and everything was done and finalized until the plans got to the chairman's desk where the IA system was first raised. So it came up as a potential issue very, very far down the path. Basically, we're trying to put the ball in the end zone here. So this caused me to chat with Pete a little bit, and he shared a couple of interesting thoughts and perspective. He did say, and I quote, "The weighted reduction in nitrogen that'll be accomplished by installing an IA septic system at this property in a fully developed subdivision of houses having conventional septic systems will be extremely small. I think Mitch should proceed with a conventional system. Every house around him is conventional. I counted 203 developed properties in the AE flood zone. If each one generates 35 parts per million, with an IA he drops to 19, that would account for only a 0.02% overall decrease in nitrogen. While this is a rough estimate, it seems manifestly unjust, in his words, to make him put an IA in. The cost for the IA system is about $10K more than the conventional system with a potentially running O&M contract, which costs in the vicinity of $2,000 per year. And also, this is a seasonal usage scenario. We plan on using the house 5 to 6 months a year. We also live in Canton, so it's easy to come back and forth. But Pete said this does not optimize an IA system due to the bacteria development. And lastly, in regards to the vegetation, when the plans were submitted, the chairman asked, I think, for 4.5 feet to keep 4.5 feet from the property lines, which we gladly did. We do not plan on clear cutting the lot, and we also plan on replacing a number of trees with other trees. My wife is an avid gardener. We have a number of pear trees, azalea bushes, rhododendrons, etc., that we absolutely plan on planting. I will gladly show you pictures of our house in Canton where we did that. So we absolutely do not have any intention of clear cutting the lot. It's really what this comes down to, and I fully understand. I've been coming down the Cape since I've been 5 years old. That's all you can tell by looking at me, a long, long time. The incremental benefit of an IA system versus all of the cost, and I don't actually know, the homeowners association is weighing whether to try to get the roads in that development turned public. So we actually had a discussion about that, and sewerage came up. They said they thought sewerage might go in there in 10 or so years, but obviously that's a long time away. So I was told it kind of is on the radar screen, albeit a long time away. But when you look at the benefit versus the out-of-pocket direct costs, I guess I just want to throw myself on the mercy of the court here and ask for some reasonable consideration. McKinty felt very strong that a conventional Title V system would be more than adequate given the size of the lot, the other 203 homes that are currently there, the maturity of the subdivision. 2 houses recently went in, one across the street, one next door, both with conventional systems. So, you know, to tag kind of the last guy out of over 200 lots seemed to be, you know, a difficult burden. And I'm fully cognizant of the nitrogen issue that Mashpee's facing. I hear you, I get it, but again, for the near-term cost benefit, I'm just, I guess, pleading with you all to put yourself in my position with consideration in terms of, you know, if you were in this chair, how you'd ask and whatnot. So I've tried to work with Steve, with Pete, with Mike, you know, local guys who know the rules and could advise me properly, and, you know, this is where we landed. So anyway, thank you, and I do appreciate the consideration.
Okay, thank you. Drew, other comments?
Just a quick point. I did bring this up to Pete McEntee's attention as soon as he submitted the plan, so this wasn't at the 11th hour. Pete was aware before this was even placed on the agenda. So it wasn't...
Well, at that time, everything was done. His plan was done.
Understood.
The house plans were done.
We see it as soon as they submit it. So we looked at it, and I provided my commentary and feedback as soon as feasibly possible based on when we received the plan. So I just... You were kind of painting a picture that this was last minute, and it wasn't.
Well, it was last minute in terms of his plan being done. He said that's what I mean. So sorry if it was misconstrued.
But it was early on in terms of our review process. So as soon as he submitted it, as soon as anyone submits plans, I make it a point to get back and try to provide commentary as soon as possible. So just clarification, that's all. The seasonal residency, I understand that, and you're right. It doesn't optimize the efficiency of an IA system, but there's no guarantee that seasonal residencies are going to remain seasonal, or they're not going to get rented out, or they're not going to change hands and become year-round residencies. So I think that's kind of a questionable point as far as this is your second home, but is it always going to remain that way? Well, nobody really knows. So just, you know, my feedback on those 2 points. No other comments.
Okay. Were there other Board of Health comments for this project? Or?
So Board of Health says the floor plan not provided to be reviewed upon submittal of building permit application. Septic design plan must be submitted and approved, and permit issued prior to sign off on building permit. Land surveyor stamp required on plans for new construction.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just add one thing, Mr. Chairman, as far as your deliberations, and a conditioned approval would be preferable to a denial. So, for what it's worth.
Okay. Tom, would you like to weigh in on this, one way or the other, before we close it out and call for a vote? No? Okay. Anyone, other commissioners online, are you all set? I guess they are. Anyone from the public that would like to speak? Being none, I'll call for a vote. Tom?
Aye.
Thank you. Brian?
Wait, can I get a point of order? I don't think there was a motion.
Sorry about that.
For a second. And then the other thing is, back to the representative, what was the conditions that you would be asking for us if we did want an IA?
Well, it appears like that to me that I haven't heard feedback, but if I read between the lines, we're not making our case. So if you're contemplating in your deliberations acting on the plan and it's not a D-night, we'd prefer that you approve with a condition for a D-night than an outright denial, because we can then consider that approval and not be faced with a denial and start over. That's my point.
That makes sense. Okay. So I got ahead of myself without a motion. Pretty hard to vote without a motion. Sorry about that. Then I'll entertain a motion from one of our commissioners.
So are we looking for a motion right now? Is that what's going on?
Yes, the
Yes, we are.
commission chairman asked for a motion.
All right, I'll make a motion. I make a motion to close an issue with the condition of implementation of an IA system.
Continue if you want to.
Thank you, Charlie.
I'll second.
Thank you, Alex. Before I call for a vote, are there any last comments or discussion from the commission?
Yeah, I think that, I just want to say that I think that stuff like this is definitely challenging for some to move on. We do want to clean up the waters. I do hear kind of both sides to the argument here. So I just think that this is a unique situation that we have to be mindful of and consistent, I think, moving forward, and work on the regs and stuff like that, because there is a lot of, I think, concerns about proceeding and making sure that everything's, making sure that the commission's protected, and us as individuals before you proceed, so,
Right.
yeah.
I agree. I mean, there's no bigger issue facing this commission right now than water quality, and indeed the entire town. Okay. I'll call for a vote. Tom?
Aye.
Brian?
No.
Steve is recused. Alex?
Hang on a second. I just want to clarify. The vote is that to approve this with an AI system.
Condition of an AI,
Condition-
IA system, yes.
Yes.
IA system. Yes. Okay. Then yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion carries.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Now calling the 6:15 hearing. Martin A. Bloom, trustee, 17 Taffrail Way. Proposed renovations to existing single-family dwelling, including replacement and reconfiguration of existing decks. Representative Down Cape Engineering. This is an NOI.
Good evening. I'm Craig Ferrari with Down Cape Engineering, here representing the Bloom family. What they would like to do on this property is right now there's some existing, what we'll call interesting shaped decks at this property. They'd like to propose an addition on the water side, which is going to be completely within one of the existing decks, and then just square off a proposed deck off of that. And then they also have another addition that is away from the water towards the street that they're proposing that's, again, mostly within an existing deck footprint. A little reconfiguration of the existing shell driveway with this proposed construction. I'm sure it'll get a little torn up during this, so we're just going to round that out a little bit when construction's all said and done. Again, most of this construction is within existing developed footprint. I believe we're actually going down in the total square footage. We had a quorum issue last time, so we've been continued due to that. I think it was also brought up that the mitigation requirement was for disturbance area. So we've recalculated the mitigation and proposed some mitigation plantings for the new proposed deck areas and addition areas that are outside of existing footprint. So feel free to ask any questions you have.
Thank you. I'll open it up to the commissioners first for questions or comments. None? Let me ask, I'm looking at the mitigation calculations, the chart, and the 50 to 100 foot distance, you've got 3,532 square feet proposed.
Yeah, that's total square footage. So I believe it's a similar amount existing. So right now, there's 3,537 square feet of hardscape within the 50 to 100 buffer, and we're proposing 3,500 and, I believe it says 32 square feet there. So the total square footage is going down. We have recalculated this so that it is 440 square feet of hardscape that's not within the existing developed footprint. So we will mitigate against that, and I think we're proposing 660 square foot of mitigation, and I can get you a revised plan showing that.
So you refer to a mitigation credit.
Yeah, so I think that came up on the last meeting. So again, as you can see in that table shown on the screen, the overall hardscape is going down, but I think it was brought to our attention that we would still need to mitigate for hardscape that's proposed that's not within existing hardscape. So I can issue a revised plan showing those altered mitigation calculations. And I do just have a rough sketch here of where that mitigation planting would occur.
Is that going to interfere with that shell walkway
Nope, so it would just be bordering the shell walkway.
on either side?
No, just on the one side here. So we'd actually expand, so most of the existing natural vegetation is kind of on the left side of this plan. So really, we just want to add the mitigation to that existing natural area so that we're, expanding a contiguous, habitat.
Okay. Thank you. Drew?
The other, I don't know if I communicated this to you prior to the last hearing, was that you got a lot of trees selected for removal around the perimeter of the home because they presumably present a risk to the property. So in those instances, we do require an arborist assessment. It's something, if this was standalone risk tree removal and no other work, we typically handle that administratively, but that's a requirement, is an assessment, written assessment by an arborist, a risk assessment. They should any arborist certified should know exactly what that entails.
Yeah, sure.
So we are going to require that for each tree that's identified.
Okay.
I can kind of see, some of the trees are in close proximity, and I can kind of see that they present a risk, but through an arborist assessment, we get a better idea of whether pruning may be an option, or treatment of the tree to try and save it, or a combination of those two, or if it's no longer viable, if it's past the point of saving. So all of those things get vetted out through that arborist assessment.
Okay.
So that would need to be done. That could be a condition of approval, as well as submission of a revised plan with the mitigation calculations.
Okay.
What was the overall revised square footage mitigation with the?
This is 662 square feet of proposed mitigation plantings.
So I would also recommend a 1-year monitoring and maintenance contract for the mitigation.
62, 1 year. Okay. And the assessment for the arborist?
Yes.
It's
for
a
each-
separate assessment for each individual tree?
Yeah, so they just list the tree species, and I think these are mostly pitch pines.
Yeah, they're mostly very large pitch pines, which would be hard to just trim a couple branches off.
Yeah, I know pruning is not really a viable thing for pitch pines, but if pine borer beetle is, infested, if there's an infestation, early on, there are treatment options. But it's just good to have an arborist vet all that out. So they just list the tree species, tree locations, and then their assessment per tree. That's
Okay.
all.
Yep. Any other comments? No?
Nope.
Any comments from the public in attendance? Okay, there being none, I'll entertain a motion from one of the commissioners.
What was the condition, 1-year monitoring?
It was a maintenance
Yeah, 1 year.
contract for 1 year.
mitigation. Yeah.
It's based on 662 square feet of mitigation. And a letter from a certified arborist for the assessment for the trees to be removed.
Then revised mitigation.
Yes, and a revised mitigation plan showing that it's, I'm right on that, right? 662?
Yep.
662.
Yep.
I move to close an issue for Martin A. Bloom trustees at 17 Taffrail Way with the conditions of a revised mitigation plan with the 662 square feet, as well as a letter from the certified arborist assessment for each tree proposed to be removed with a 1-year monitoring and maintenance. Is that it?
Yep. Thank you, Brian. Is there a second to Brian's motion? Thank you, Charlie. Any further discussion or comments on the motion that's on the table? I know online people are a great distance away, so I'd like to wait a second.
Sure.
I guess there isn't. Okay, call for a vote based on that motion and second. Now voting. Tom?
Aye.
Thank you. Brian?
Yes.
Thank you. Alex?
Yes.
Thank you, Alex. Charlie?
Yes.
Thank you. And I vote yes as well. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
What's that? As far as what? You accusing yourself?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine, yep. Yep.
Okay, should I not even call it or what?
I would just make an announcement that you are recusing yourself from this.
I'm going to recuse myself from the next hearing because I'm part of the administrative group of people from Seabrook Meadows Association, and that's where this parcel is. So I'll turn this hearing over to our Vice Chairman, Tom O'Neill. Thank you, Tom.
I'll open this 6/18 hearing of Stephanie N. and Eric Meads, 68 Monomoskoye Road. This is an NOI, proposed hardscaping, landscaping, pool and patio. Representative Crawford, Land Management.
Good evening. Jen Crawford from Crawford Land Management here on behalf of the applicants Stephanie and Eric Meads. Stephanie is in the audience with us tonight. We were continued last time because for lack of a quorum, so I'll give a brief overview and open it up to questions. The site survey work and resource delineation work was completed by J.M. O'Reilly and Associates. Those existing and proposed site plans were submitted with our application package. The more pertinent plan would be the plan submitted by our office. In summary of the resource areas, there is a BVW to the southeast, off property to the southeast. The associated 50 and 100-foot buffer zones fall within the property. There is flood zone AE, which is at elevation 11, that encompasses part of the property, as well as an ACEC area. The riverfront also crosses the property. The 100-foot riverfront line is at approximately halfway through the 200-foot falls over the northwestern property line onto the adjacent property. This lot is in a developed area. It's the kind of last one on the road before you get to that BVW, so to speak. The project itself is very simple in nature. It's basically reconfiguring existing driveway and parking areas. There's a large asphalt area that runs basically all along the northwestern property line, the furthest away from the BVW on the property and completely outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. The project proposes to basically redevelop the asphalt areas into outdoor living spaces with a small pool, relocating the existing shed, installing a deck patio adjacent to the pool. And then there's a small crushed stone aggregate patio area in what is an existing lawn area. So the project is very simple in nature. All of the activities are taking place in areas that are either asphalt or lawn and already developed. They are, for the most part, almost all outside of that 100-foot buffer to the BVW, even though they do fall within other areas within jurisdiction. There's no activity within the 50 to 100-foot buffer zone proposed, with the exception of mitigation planting. Within that 50 to 100-foot buffer zone, we do have an increase in coverage. It's mostly in the way of aggregate patio, so not hardscape, so to speak. Hardscape, but not hardscape in terms of your mitigation calcs. So we have offered 2-to-1 mitigation to increase that buffer area at the 50-foot buffer zone, contiguous with an existing naturalized area, and that's it.
Drew, your comments?
So just to show the commissioners some photos of the site, looking at the road top left here, the existing home. This is the driveway area top right, where some of the proposed activity as described is taking place. And here, bottom left, pool patio area back here, and I think like a cabana area, and some additional hardscaping. And then here, the bottom right photo shows where the pool and patio area are going. So you can see it's all over pre-disturbed, pre-developed, or pre-landscaped areas. Again, just looking at some more photos. Top left here, again, shot of the pool area staked out, and some of the hardscaping aggregate patio. Again, patio in this area. And then here on the bottom, this is the mitigation area where it's just kind of like scattered ornamentals and unmaintained grass, and this is the area where mitigation, and this is all buffer strip. Back here, you've got BVW associated with Dutchman's Creek, which is a perennial stream. So the resource areas on the property are BVW, or buffer zone to BVW. There's flood zone. Some of the flood zone is associated with area of critical environmental concern associated with the Quape watershed. And buffer zone to perennial stream. And as was already described, the proposed alterations are mostly within the 50 to 100-foot setback and then within land subject to coastal storm flow, all within previously and legally altered areas. The only question I had was just a minor question. In the project narrative, it mentions that herbicides will be applied by a licensed applicator, but there's no mention anywhere in the narrative where herbicides might need to be used. So I just wanted to clarify why that disclaimer is there and what's the background there.
Yes, there really are no invasives on the property that I recall seeing. It probably is just standard language that got put in along with standard monitoring stuff. So
we just wanted to make sure. I mean, if it was something, associated with mitigation to keep other plantings from encroaching in, that would be something I'd say hand pull it out and don't use herbicide. But if it's just a template language that was left in there, that's kind of what I think.
I would agree with that assessment in that area. So we'd be happy to revise that and say something like if invasive species are occurring, we could manage them without herbicide, or if for some reason it was necessary, we could consult with you.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, just a minor observations. There are no other comments. Oh, sorry, Board of Health, just real quick. Required setbacks from edge of the in-ground pool are 10 feet from tank and 20 feet from the soil absorption system. Note location of septic system and restrict equipment, vehicle traffic over non-loading bearing H10 components. Access to all septic components must be maintained.
I believe that it is.
Okay.
And a lot of the front yard, if I may say, is, I'm really worried about this.
Just, you gotta come up to the mic just to give your name for the record.
Oh, I'm Stephanie Meets, the
We're happy to
homeowner.
hear from you.
I'm sorry. I just want to say too, a lot of the front yard, I'm really worried with the safety of Monomoskoye. Like, when you pull onto Monomoskoye, heading toward the island, there is no view whatsoever. And I ask to, maybe we can work together to pull that back some, because I am really worried someone from my house is gonna hit someone, or it's a really big
Vegetation
safety.
coming out over the road shoulder.
Yeah, I have a
that.
picture.
We did include a note on our plan
Okay.
on that corner to, no, you're fine.
I almost hit
didn't-
somebody the other day, so.
No, you're fine. I didn't mention it during my presentation, and I should have, but
Oh,
we
right-
did,
right
we
here,
did
yeah.
include a note on our plan for pruning, for
Yeah.
visibility.
I understand.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had the same concern pulling out of that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's scary
And it's kind of
situation.
a fast road, actually.
It is, people, speed coming off the island, and, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
little scary.
And I think
Completely
we have it
understand.
listed to consult in the field with the agent on what may be able to be pruned versus not pruned for
Sure.
those safety aspects.
Sorry
so.
to interrupt.
Nope, you're fine, absolutely. I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah.
Anything from the commissioners? Any discussion? Anyone from the audience?
I have a question. I was just curious what your plan is for maintaining the pool. I was just curious, like, will you be drained on the property? Kind of what the plan is for that.
It was broken up a little bit. We have, water maintenance.
If you want to talk.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
talking about-
Water maintenance of our other houses, we have a saltwater pool, and we have someone come each week. Was that the question? Water maintenance?
If you need to drain the pool.
We've never drained our other pool. We just, we've just.
I can't
we've
hear.
We've never drained our other pool, so I'm not I'm not sure of the,
I think the commissioners always have a concern about
Yeah.
Whether there's a dry well accessible for backwashing, if the
If you have to
pool
drain
still
anything
requires
with the pool
backwashing.
chemicals that like it, I think,
Okay.
to drain into a dry well.
okay. We would drain into the dry well as,
We could do that.
and we can do that, okay.
Yep.
Whatever is the safest,
Is
most.
there a dry well shown on the plan?
There is not. We would, I would need to talk with J.M. O'Reilly, the engineer of record, about that and putting something on that was sized appropriately. So if that needed to be a condition for safety purposes, then that, we would be amenable to having J.M. O'Reilly
Okay, yes.
take a look at that.
Okay. So we'll condition that you'll provide a revised plan showing the dry well.
That would be appreciated.
And as I mentioned in my comments, recommendation of approval, condition of approval also is a 2-year contract for maintaining and monitoring the mitigation.
That's a standard condition by you guys, pretty much, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And what about the pruning?
And the pruning can be overseen with a scheduled on-site with myself just to deem it's appropriate and accurate. It's definitely needed. I know that. It's growing out over shoulder.
Okay. Anybody from the audience? Any more discussion? Would someone like to entertain a motion?
Mr. Vice Chairman, I move that we close Stephanie N. and Eric V. Meads at 68 Monomoskoye
Charlie,
Road.
Brian,
Condition of 2-year
Charlie?
mitigation monitoring and maintenance contract.
He's going.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, let's take a vote. Brian?
Yes.
I'll vote aye. Steve?
Yes.
Alexandra?
Was the dry well put in there as a
It
condition?
was.
It was a condition of the,
Condition.
Okay, then yes.
Charlie? Charlie?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
So we do have some, but, you want me to go into the?
Yeah, we're
Posts? Yeah. So we have some meeting minutes to approve. First set of meeting minutes is from April 14th, 2022. And the commissioners present tonight that should be voting on these meeting minutes are Chad Smith, Charlie Dalton, Alex Solo, Paul Colombo, and Brian Whedon.
Thank you, Drew. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes for April 14th, 2022?
So moved.
Thank you, Chad. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion, further discussion on that? No? I'll call for a vote. Chad?
Aye.
Charlie?
Yes.
Alex? Alex?
Yes.
Thank you. Brian?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion carries.
Thank you. Second set of minutes is from April 28th, 2022. And commissioners present this evening who are a quorum in that meeting are Chad Smith, Charlie Dalton, Alex Solo, and Brian Whedon.
And Tom O'Neill?
Not in the second set of minutes, not April 28th.
You have them in parentheses.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Tom.
I have it underneath. My apologies. Yes, Tom and Paul.
And Steve.
But Steve was not.
I was associate.
He was an associate.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a second? Oh,
Second.
Did we have a
I
motion?
didn't get the motion.
So
Twice
moved.
tonight. Is there a motion to accept the minutes of April 28th, 2022?
Move to approve the minutes of 4/28/22.
Thank you, Charlie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on that set of minutes? There being none, I'll call for a vote. Chad?
Aye.
Charlie?
Yes.
Alex?
You have to say yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you. Brian?
Yes.
Tom?
Aye.
And I vote yes as well. Motion carries.
Okay.
Two down, two to go.
Yeah. Next set of minutes are May 12th, 2022. And voting on those minutes will be Chad Smith, Tom O'Neill, Paul Colombo, and Charlie Dalton.
Motion to
Move
approve.
to approve the minutes of 5/12/22.
You got to be quick.
Second.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Chad, for your second. Is there any further discussion on that set of minutes? There being none, I'll call for a vote. Chad?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Charlie?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion carries.
Okay, the last set of minutes is May 26th, 2022. And those voting on those minutes are Chad Smith, Paul Colombo, Tom O'Neill, Alex Zolo, and Charlie Dalton.
Thank you. Is there a motion for that set of minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Chad. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Charlie. Any further discussion on that last set of minutes? There being none, I'll call for a vote. Chad?
Aye.
Thank you. Tom?
Aye.
Alex?
Yes.
Thank you. Charlie?
Charlie?
Settled. Thank you, Charlie. I vote yes as well. Motion carries.
Thank you. So I can run through these updates for the commissioners. First update is the Red Brook Road culvert. So Horsley Witten Group finalized their report on the failed culvert, replacement of the failed culvert. And I distributed that report, well, a link to view the report on our conservation webpage so that anyone from the public who's watching can also view that report. There is a link to it, to the PDF on the conservation page of the town's website. We encourage everyone to take a look at it, read through it. It's a lot of technical information, but the recommendations are for replacement of the failed culvert. There was evidence of undermining, most likely through burrowing animals over time. It's an old berm, it's an old culvert, so not surprising that it's failed. And then to replace it with an 8-foot wide box culvert, raise the road up slightly, and all in the interest of improving the road safety and then doing some restoration of the immediate embankments on the upper and the upstream and downstream side of the culvert. So in an initial meeting with representatives from Falmouth DPW, Mashpee DPW, and the Concom agent from Falmouth, Betsy Gladfelter, who's kind of a consultant with the town of Falmouth, and also a conservation commissioner who's been helping us out with this project. We had an initial meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we'll have another meeting tomorrow just to review the report, come to a consensus on the recommendations, whether or not to follow through with them or any modifications. And then the next step is to, once that decision is finalized as far as the approach on fixing this culvert, which it looks like all signs point to a replacement as per Horsley Witten's recommendation, proceeding to find funding sources for planning, permitting, and construction. So this, as the commissioners may recall, this study was paid for through a grant from the Division of Ecological Restoration, State of Massachusetts. And they do have a culvert replacement program for technical assistance, which the town's qualified for this round, but they also have funding for planning, permitting, and construction. So we'll be looking to take advantage of that and any other available funding sources to pay for expenses moving forward. Any questions or?
I got a couple.
Yeah.
I looked it over quickly today. I didn't read the whole thing, but what caught my attention was it's a tidal dam of some type. That's failed as well.
Yes, downstream.
And would that be part of the repair in
I didn't
addition to
see
the
it as
culvert?
part of the scope of work only because I think in that area, you get into private ownership. It's the road layout and the culvert that's clearly owned by the two towns. But any work downstream or upstream, you have to be looking at dealing with private property ownership in order to proceed with that. But I think that just in my estimation, the downstream concerns that should be addressed, for improving flow and dealing with, old structures will likely, I think, be a pretty clear communication process for the abutters. So you're dealing with fewer abutters. You're not really changing the dynamics of the system itself.
Right.
It's always been a brook. It will remain a brook. So I think that aspect of it may, the pathway to achieving that may be simpler than the northern end when you're dealing with a lot of abutters who have been used to a specific condition. Waterfront property that may change depending on how we approach that.
Right.
But,
I didn't look at the elevations of that dam. Is it conceivable that if it wasn't repaired as well, that now that you put an 8-foot box culvert in there, that on some unusual high tides, that saltwater influx would get right back up into?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that area is heavily infested with Phragmites to the south.
Right.
So improving that tidal flow and getting more salt water or brackish water in there could help to reduce the frag infestation in that area too. Okay. So, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions from the commissioners online? Upper Quashnet, not much to add, still ongoing collection of data for the planning and permitting phase of the restoration. We'll see eventually a modified conceptual plan based on that restoration number. I think it was the third restoration scenario, which is wetland restoration as well as river rerouting to maximize cold water fisheries habitat and fish passage. So any new updates that come down the pike, we'll get them right out to you. And I know that Horsley Witten, once they complete this next phase, will be coming back in to update the commission as well. Bylaw Review Subcommittee will reconvene at another meeting to try and finalize Regulation 30, water pollution, prevention of pollution. Also, the October 2022 town meeting warrant article includes a recommended bylaw change from the town's consultants of Fuss and O'Neill through the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program. They made recommendations that I had updated the commission on, which are now going to be part of a town meeting article. One of the major changes to the buffer zone is the increase of the buffer zone jurisdiction from 100 feet to 150 feet. And that will have to be reflected in wherever that's mentioned in any of the subsequent regulations. Most prominently in Regulation 29, which deals with buffer zones and buffer strips. So it's really just replacing the 100 feet with 150 feet wherever that's mentioned throughout the regulations. And then Regulation 25, land subject to coastal storm flowage. There are some suggested regulatory language changes for that regulation. Including, restriction on development, increased development and impervious surfaces in the flood zone, tree removal, restricting tree removal and vegetation removal. So I believe you should all have those recommendations, but I'll send them out again just in case you need them, if you don't have them currently. And if there's any questions, we can address them in future meetings. Also, for Regulation 29, buffer zones and buffer strips, there is a direct mitigation calculation for trees based on size. So if trees are to be removed on a property because of development, Fuss and O'Neill made these recommendations of proper ratio of mitigation based on tree size and numbers. So I'll make sure that everybody has these proposed amendments to our regs that are officially on the October town meeting warrant. Johns Pond and Santuit Pond. So I believe Johns Pond underwent the secondary treatment this past week for the remaining areas of milfoil, which was roughly 3 acres. In talking to our consultant, to the contractors, Water and Wetlands, they said they were going to be able to get out there this past week, and I did send out notification to all of the neighborhood associations in that area to let them know, and the contractors themselves post warnings around all of the public waterways and private waterways access points to let the public know about the treatment. As the commission could recall, this treatment dissipates very quickly. The only public health restriction is not to use water pumped out of the pond for irrigating crops within 24 hours of the treatment. There's no other public warnings or health issues associated with the treatment for the milfoil. And then I still need to have a discussion, extended discussion about how we're going to approach the milfoil, and there's also another invasive species called fanwort, which has been detected in Santuit Pond. So we'll have to have a meeting with DNR, myself, and the contractor to discuss what the best approach is there, and then I will be filing for a notice of intent request to treat Santuit Pond once we vet out what the overall approach is going to be. So that'll be a forthcoming petition before the summer's over. Choptic Bog, Phase 2 is ongoing, planning and permitting stage. We will be having an onsite coming up with Horsley Witten Group and the ILF program, in lieu fee program, to go over the results of ground penetrating radar to see what the depths of sand is in the bog system, so that will dictate how much excavation will be needed and where to get to those wetland conditions. So I'll be sending out any new updates for that. And the local comprehensive plan recently had a workshop on Saturday, July 23rd about closed systems. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend that workshop, so I can't give the commission a breakdown on what took place. I don't know if anyone.
I was there. Yep.
I don't know if you want to.
There was a fewer number of people at that workshop than there was at the 3 previous ones. I think they combined one of the tables into other tables just to kind of balance things off. It went pretty much in the same fashion as the other ones. There's a lot of feedback, still focusing on water quality. There was a lot of talk about the wastewater treatment plant, the construction, when it's going to start, how it's going to phase in. There was a lot of, I found, kind of interesting conversations about increasing bike paths, not along highways, but off of the, set back from the highways into the woodland areas. So I would think a lot of that would be right in our lap when, if it does come to fruition. There was much discussion about electric vehicles, charging stations, being available in town, not only for cars, but for bicycles. E-bikes are coming on strong, and wheelchairs for handicapped. So they really covered a lot. And again, like all of these sessions, it's kind of like pie in the sky dream, and then it's the reality of how does it all happen?
Right.
But it can't happen until you dream it up first. So I think it really went well.
Good, good. So the last item is not, it's just under additional topics, and it was discussion on CPA funding for 751 Main Street to try and see if this could be reviewed by the Community Preservation Act Committee, and subsequent to that, be placed on the October town meeting. So I'll just, I don't know if you want to, as chairman, open it up for discussion. Because it's not on the agenda. It doesn't, I don't think it involves a vote, but it's just,
I looked at that, and I was a little bit, I don't know if I'm having a memory lapse. Did we not already discuss sending a letter to support that?
I thought we did.
We did. Yes, we did send a letter of endorsement.
Of endorsement.
But I think just the timing, I don't know, Chad, if you want to speak to this CPA meeting schedule, by the time it was like ready to submit, we just didn't meet the deadline, unfortunately, for October, for the October town meeting. So as it currently stands, it would go to May, but we're trying to see if we can get on the October town meeting, even though it's past the deadline, to see if it's possible. And the only reason why we want to get this on sooner than later is because the landowners, we don't know how patient they're going to be and how long they're going to want to wait before developing this 8-acre parcel for the town to see, if we can get it purchased using CPA funds. So.
That's it.
Yeah.
In a nutshell.
What is the purchase price?
1.2, was it 1.2?
Off the top of my head, it was, I want to say 1.2 million.
1.2?
1.2. And I've heard just unofficially that there are sufficient CPA funds to cover that. But I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but that's what I've heard secondhand. So this whole thing is to try and see if CPA can make get an appraisal done, make a recommendation, and get that recommendation onto the October town meeting warrant, as opposed to May. If it falls to May, we just have to hope that the landowners will be patient and be able to wait until then, if it looks like funding can be secured. So we'll see.
Wow.
No.
Okay.
There's a lot of, just so the commission's aware, there's a lot of parcels coming up for consideration of purchasing. And Evan and I, Evan Valera, the town planner, are trying to identify these parcels and meet with the landowners to see if they would be interested in having the town purchase them. And some of these parcels are really strategically very important, not only in terms of their location within the Math Refuge boundary, but There's 11 acres right down 130 here that goes all the way to Mashpee Wakeby Pond. The 8-acre site at 751 Main Street, which is directly abuts Pickerel Cove. Both those areas are within the Mashpee Math Refuge boundary. And then there's more acreage over by Quashnet Valley Golf Club, close to the Quashnet River, that's up for possible acquisition. So you're going to see a lot of these coming down the pike. And for each one, we'll make sure that we get a letter of endorsement out. But just to put it in your ear, it's, we're getting seeing a lot of these potential acquisitions coming.
And are there grant programs that could help subsidize that?
Yeah, I think there might be. I've heard from Tana Marie, she's the director over at the Wacoit Bay Research Reserve, that there's a lot of federal funding coming out that can be used for not only restoration projects, but for land purchase. And so we'll be looking at those. And, anyone who wants to get involved, I know you had offered up, but anyone else, just to kind of, help with the research in this and see what grants are applicable and we may be able to take advantage of. Because in my mind, that, purchasing of open space and preventing further development in some of these more sensitive areas should go right to the top of the priority list.
Absolutely.
We've got grant funding in place for a lot of restoration projects, and eventually those can be part of that, but getting the land out and into open space is right at the top as far as the number one priority, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know how, but Drew, I would be happy to help you in any way.
Okay.
So
I'm gonna put out
any of this.
I'm gonna put out an email just with a list of the grant opportunities and links to them, and then people can start doing research, and we can bring it up at future meetings as an ongoing pre-post agenda item to see what we can work out, what kind of research we can do to see if we're eligible, and then start taking advantage of these opportunities.
Right.
So I'll add it as a pre-post ongoing
Great
agenda item.
Great.
Mr. Chairman, maybe we can create a subcommittee or something if there's more interest from other commissioners, like we did last time when we were talking about with the town identifying some of those parcels and stuff like that when that option came before the commission.
It's a good
So that's
idea.
also an option, I think, for us.
I'd be happy to support that subcommittee. I think it's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
And that's it. No other
Perfect
updates?
idea. Okay.
Oh, is there a Katrina on the line? Katrina? I don't know if she's, I can try sending her a.
She might have been listening to a hearing and forgot to log out, or?
She is associated with compliance, which is necessary to show up.
Oh,
Didn't
oh,
want to
oh.
disconnect without
Yeah,
acknowledging
right.
that she hung on this whole time.
Katrina, are you on the line? Can you hear us?
No, I still can't.
I think we all know what it means when we see someone's name and not a camera feed.
What's the COC for?
65 Lakeview Drive.
Right. 65 Lakeview. Well,
As soon as possible.
we've got to chat mode now. This is a first.
Yeah, right?
Okay.
Is that on a modem?
She got it.
Cool.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to close the hearing?
You want to put an end to this?
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Brian. Anybody object or? No, I guess we're good. Okay, let me take a vote. Tom?
Aye.
Thank you. Brian?
Yes.
Thank you, Steve.
Yes.
Alex? Are you still there?
She's nodding her head, yes.
We're looking for a vote, Alex, on adjournment.
Yes.
Thank you. Charlie?
Yes.
Thank you, Charlie. I vote yes as well. Meeting adjourned at
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
7:55.